of the Board Game Geek podcast, where we geek out about board games, the mechanisms behind them, and the people who create them. I'm your host, Candice Harris, and I'm super stoked to be here today with Jonathan Cox from the JonGetsGames YouTube channel. How's it going today, Jonathan?
It's going great. I love being on podcasts. So you want me to talk about games, huh? I guess I can go for that.
Cool. What's new? What's new in your world?
Well, lately, I've been playing a lot of card games, and that is why we're going to be talking about a lot of card games later on. You know, you're like, what topic do you want to say? And I'm like, well, how about the thing that I can't stop talking about for the last 3 months?
I love it. I love it. Well, yeah, today, as Jonathan alluded, we are going to be discussing some of the most interesting trick-taking games that we've played and really enjoy. And yeah, they're just not necessarily like our favorite trick-taking games, but they are just games that have some kind of like unique twist or weirdness to them, that just make them kind of stand out. We both had the pleasure of playing an awesome trick-taking game together for the first time last year at BGGCon. And we'll talk about that a little later, but you know, that and also your, you know, love and passion, especially recent excitement for card games like this kind of sparked this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm like loving this, you know, resurgence of trick-taking games. I feel like every month I'm hearing about some crazy new trick-taking games that are coming out with like different themes or mishmashing, you know, different mechanisms with trick-taking. And then we got, you know, Taylor in Portland with Taylor's Trick-Taking Table YouTube channel, where he just kind of showcases so many of these games so that we can know they exist and see how they play, you know?
Yeah. It's funny. I can't help but wonder if there's more buzz about card games, trick-taking, climbing, that kind of game lately, or if a couple people won't stop talking about it, like me and Taylor, and you know, it's kind of making like, is it artificial or not? I don't know, but I've been really enjoying falling into it.
Yeah, I feel it too. So I feel it too.
It does seem like there are tons coming out though, and one of the reasons I've been really enjoying it lately is because just every week I've been learning new ones, and some of them are old, some of them are brand new. There's like a couple different schools of design, you know, with like some more classic stuff. I'm definitely going to be talking about at least one classic, but then also some like modern stuff that seems like it's largely coming out of Japan that have its own kind of vibes. It's just, you know, it like every rabbit hole, the deeper you go, the deeper you go.
Yeah.
and the deeper you realize there's no floor to this.
Yeah, I've been enjoying them a bunch, and like definitely love learning them. You know, I think this kind of, well, my love of trick-taking games kind of kicked off back in 2019 or so when Horseless Carriage came out. It's like, that was a German version. I think the US version is called Delt.
Yes.
The English edition of it. But that game kind of was like groundbreaking for me and made me want to go out and buy a ton of trick-taking games. And I did at that point. But then I co-host on the Game Brain podcast occasionally, and I mentioned, like, I introduced that crew to Scout. And when I did that, a Game Brain listener, another Portland trick-taking gamer, Jonah, ended up messaging me and was like, hey, I got some games to show you. And we played online, and he introduced me to Cat in the Box and a couple other like really awesome games. And then I also got to meet him for the first time at BGGCon last year, and he introduced me to a couple of trick-taking games that are actually going to be on my list. So yeah, I don't know. I'm finding it super, super exciting. And you're right. I don't know if it's just, you know, because we're personally very excited about it, that it seems like it's this blooming thing, but who knows?
As a fan of novelty, I really like these because the mechanics can be so wacky, and the teaches are so quick, and the games are so quick. So you can just like get a ton of novelty, you know, like, you know, you could play like 2 or 3 of them in an hour, like brand new ones you never even heard of before. And it's just kind of fun to explore all of those waters. And for me, Scout was, I think, my gateway card game as well. You
Down
know,
this rabbit hole.
The climbing, shedding type game instead of pure trick taking. But I was actually taught Scout by Taylor Renner of Taylor's Trick-Taking Table like almost 2 years ago now. And I fell in love with it, played it a bunch, and then, well, I guess the rest is history, and we'll have a lot of history to talk about.
Right. Yeah, and Scout actually kind of, I told you Crass Carriage was the first game that got me really excited about, different trick-taking games and everything. Even though that's technically a climbing game as well, I think.
Yeah, it depends on how pedantic you want to get.
But for me, like when I played Scout, I was just like, oh, I don't really need to play this other game anymore because like Scout does some of the same things but does some things that I like better. So,
yeah.
All right. But before we start talking about some really interesting trick-taking games,
too late.
Seriously, I'd love to hear what you've been playing lately, Jonathan. So let's jump into fresh plays.
Yeah. So I'm not going to talk about card games here because we're going to definitely get that out later on. So a couple of games to talk about that I played really recently. The first one is kind of a new hotness, at least among heavy gamers, and that's Horseless Carriage.
Woo!
This is the new Splotter Spellin game that just came out. It's all about building the first cars. And Candice, have you had an opportunity to play this one yet?
I have had the opportunity.
Oh, awesome.
And yeah, I feel like my brain is still smoking from it.
Yeah, so there are many Splotter designs out there. I've played a few of them, not a ton of them. I wouldn't say I'm a connoisseur, but they're generally heavy games with decent sized teaches, an hour or so, maybe more, and then usually many hours to actually play. And while I've enjoyed the experience of learning many of these in the past, specifically like Antiquity and Food Chain Magnate, I haven't fallen in love with any of them. And so far, Horseless Carriage is definitely my favorite after one play. And the biggest reason for that is because I'm a bit of a Care Bear. And, Splotter games are well known for being sharp. Like they'll cut you if you make make a mistake. And you'd be a couple hours in, and you make a mistake, you could really have trouble. I mean, that was my problem with Food Chain Magnate. I think it's a brilliant design. I played it like 3 or 4 times, and just one too many times somebody undercut the price of the hamburgers, and then all my hamburgers rotted, and I just kind of went out for it. But with Horseless Carriage, it's interesting because if you're doing badly, you just don't get as many victory points. It doesn't actually matter mechanically if you're doing good or bad. So it's this interesting thing where you can be playing poorly. So you build this factory in front of you. It's kind of like a physical polyomino puzzle. For the most part, they're like, squares and rectangles and that kind of thing. You're trying to jam all this stuff in, make these supply chains, or I guess manufacturing chains, to create the cars and make them safer and do all sorts of stuff like that. And again, if you totally botch that, which you will for sure the first time you play, you're just going to get less points. But the next round, you can build your factory just as much as the person who's crushing you on the victory point track. So it's an interesting thing where you're allowed to play everything, even as you're doing poorly. You're still going to lose, but at least you get to tinker with the stuff. If you had money and you needed to spend that money to build your factory, then maybe it would be different. Like, oh, I'm doing very poorly, so I don't have money, so I can't build infrastructure. So it's like a negative cycle. There is no negative cycle in this game. You get to play with all the toys. I feel like it's like bowling. Like, you essentially have the bumper lanes out. And you play with somebody who doesn't need the bumpers, and they're just going to keep crushing strikes. But you're playing in the same lane, and you might need those bumpers, and you're probably still not going to beat them. But at least you feel like you're in it. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, this is like literally an hour-long teach. There's so much you could say about this. But after that one play, it took us like 3.5 hours for the 4 of us. First play for all of us.
Okay.
I went away from it really curious to try it more. Like specifically that factory puzzle is so neat. But then there's this whole supply and demand chart almost of varying demand of things, and it's very tactile because you put these like hoops around it, like lasso customers kind of, but then you competitively could take people out of other people's lassos. It has nothing to do with the West, but anyway, it's a cool game. It's a really cool game, and so far I think it's well on the way after one play of probably being my favorite Splotter. I have played I guess the Great Zimbabwe as well, but there's a bunch that I haven't tried.
I was just about to ask you if you had played the Great Zimbabwe, because that is my favorite splatter. Yeah,
and I really enjoyed it, but I got crushed, and it was one of those games where as I got crushed, I felt like I could do less, and I don't really think that's a negative on the game itself, and I really do want to come back to that one. Maybe not playing it with a person who totally saw all the lines where I didn't, but I definitely want to explore that one more. Indonesia is another one that I haven't played that I've heard great things about.
Me neither.
So there's definitely more to explore, but for now, Horseless Carriage is it's got my brain, and we're already in the process of trying to schedule another play of this one.
Awesome. Yeah, so first I'll just say I think the Great Zimbabwe may be my favorite splatter, but if you're at BGGCon, we should definitely try to play that and or Indonesia. Because I've been wanting to play Indonesia forever. I think I'm going to love it, but I'm in the
same boat.
Yeah, it was one of those things where like right when the pandemic was starting and everybody was getting on Tabletop Simulator, we were like, I had a game scheduled and I had like, we were having issues because everyone was connecting to TTS. It was like back in those days where it was like, everybody's just home trying to play games online. But Horseless Carriage is awesome. So I had the privilege, I guess, of playing it at a private gaming convention a year ago, like a near finished prototype.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and Urin, actually, one of the designers, taught the game. And I was just like buzzing and like loved it. Loved it. I still do, by the way. Yeah. But that initial impression was so strong. And I just remember whenever you go to that phase where you're doing that spatial puzzle, building out your factory, which is like simultaneous, like my brain, every time it was like we got to that phase, I'm just like, oh no, stress.
That is pouring out of your ears.
Yeah, that is such a challenge for me, that spatial puzzle. But I love it, and I just love the design. And it's like every splatter game, whether they're kind of mean and, you get crushed or whatever, I still like, it's something I always want to like play and try to just keep getting better at.
Yeah.
Like my first experience with Food Chain Magnate was, it was a 3-player game, 2 people who were like very super experienced with it. And they were great. They were like holding my hand, teaching me. And I thought I was getting the swing of it. And I was kind of building my restaurant all the way over on the other side of the, the map. And one turn, I kind of got lazy and loose. And I lost turn order. And that was it. Like the game, like that mistake just kind of crushed me. And then another player took advantage of it. And it was just like, should we continue, or like, is there any chance for, So I feel you there, but yeah, I love Horseless Carriage. I got my copy a couple weeks ago and I hadn't punched it because I was waiting for my Etsy insert to show up because it has so many little bits and pieces that I was like,
I heard it's 19 punch boards.
It's something crazy. Like I got the insert over the weekend and I ended up spending like one evening, just like we're watching a movie or something, and I'm just like punching and organizing. But now it looks great, and so
I can imagine.
Yeah, so I'm stoked to play this one more too. Something I've played recently, which I know you have played, is Lowlands.
Yeah.
So on episode 13 of this podcast, with Simon from Amass Games, I basically mentioned how I'm not into farming games. Like, for some reason, I don't need to have a theme that I love, but there's something that turns me off a little bit about farming games usually, where I'm like, like I haven't gotten into Agricola yet, and I feel like I should be super into it, but something like just didn't excite me about it like the couple of times I played it. So anyway, literally the day after recording that episode and talking to Simon about how I don't like farming games, something, our brains are so weird, but like something made me think about Lowlands. Like Lowlands is a game that a couple years ago I saw, like I was walking by a table at a convention and I was like, ooh, what is that they're playing? And it was Lowlands. I also remember, like, I have a friend of mine who has Lowlands and I remember he liked it a lot. But again, I always was like, whatever, it's a farming game, you know. So for some reason that popped back into my brain after I recorded this episode 13. So then I started like looking it up, reading some reviews, watching some videos, including your playthrough.
Yep, I got a full playthrough out
there. Which is excellent. And I just got like really excited. I was like, I want to play this game. So then I like ended up ordering a copy from someone secondhand on the BGG Geek Market, got my copy, and I think I got it, I don't know, like a week or so ago. But I ended up playing it twice so far.
Awesome.
And I played it 3 players, and then I played it with 4 players. And Lowlands is a game that came out in 2018. It's designed by Claudia Partenheimer and Ralph Partenheimer, and it's published by Feuerland Spiel, and Z-Man Games has the US edition. But it plays with 2 to 4 players, and in the game, we're farmers, basically, and you're kind of breeding sheep, and you have this board, a farm board, where you're able to upgrade it, and you're building fences around different squares on your farm board to like create pastures, yada yada yada, farming stuff. But
who cares about farming when there's a flood on the horizon?
Exactly. The cool thing about the game is that there's this main board where this flood is kind of developing, and one of the actions in the game, or one of the core concepts of the game, is that the players, we are able to build a dike to prevent this flood from like washing away our little sheep. And it's a really cool mechanism because there are these cards that flip. You play over like 3 stages, and there are these different phases. And one of the phases, you're going to like reveal a water card to see how much water is going to come. And you have these wooden water pieces that are kind of filling out the board. And then one of the actions the players can take is contributing to building a dike, where you are spending resources to not only advance yourself on the dike path track, which is important, but you're working together to kind of complete sections of this dike by spending resources. And there's another phase where we check the dike to see if it holds, meaning we built the dike far enough that it, passes where the water is, or to see if it breaks. And there are implications in either scenario. So, for example, every time you contribute to this dike path, you're going to move, or to building the dike, you're going to move on this dike path, and you're going to be, there are a certain amount of points for like every couple spaces, like, oh, this is 1 point, this one's worth 2 points, this one's worth 3 points. And every time you take that action, you have to ask one other player if they would like to contribute. And
which is just brilliant.
Yeah. So you have to ask somebody, and if they do, they get to bump on this. If they contribute resources and help, they get to bump on this path too, but then you get to bump an extra step. So anyway, if this dike, if it floods, the players who are furthest behind, meaning they contributed the least to helping build the dike, are going to get hit with these breach tokens. And it's based on the distance between where you are in relation to the person who's furthest ahead on that track. And then meanwhile, if the dike holds, then you get coins. And the further you are again ahead on this track, the more money you'll get. And the person who's furthest behind doesn't get anything. But even more importantly, depending on whether it floods or if the dike holds strong, there is this value that is being manipulated throughout the game. So at the beginning of the game, I think it's like every dike path point is going to be worth 1. And then all of your sheep are worth 3. So as we flood, this kind of like stock market kind of mechanism is going to shift in one direction. And if we don't flood, it shifts in another direction. And so we are kind of like, through what we are doing as players with building this dike or not contributing and flooding, changing the value of what each sheep is going to be worth at the end of the game. And also how far you are on the dike path, like those points will get a certain value. So it's, the main mechanism, like what you're doing throughout the game when you take actions, is you have your own private board of 5 different actions. So it's not really worker placement. You're kind of like placing a farmer on a space, and if you want to take the same action twice in the same round, you have to like pay $1 per every farmer you have there. But the actions are really straightforward. You build fences, you can gain resources, you can buy and sell sheep. You're also trying to build these different building tiles on your board, which can make you, operate more efficiently because, there might be a game where every sheep is worth, my first game, every sheep was worth 4 points at the end of the game. So then you're trying to breed as many sheep as possible. So anyway, I think it's like this awesome, solid medium weight game. And I love that the pricing or the value of what you score at the end of the game is kind of driven by players and how much they're contributing to the dike or not contributing. I love that there are just like 5 actions and they're all kind of, straightforward, but the tiles are all like the different tiles you can get are very interesting. And you have some player interaction there because I had somebody, like I had my eye on a building and I was like, ooh, that's going to be perfect for my farm. And then the player ahead of me swiped it up and I was like, no. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Lowlands?
So I was super excited when this first came out. Like you said, back in 2018, I played it a couple of times. I made that video, and I don't think I've played it since I made that video, but it's still in our collection. It keeps surviving culls as we remove games.
Nice.
And that's because I keep wanting to come back to it. And a really interesting thing that I've kind of figured out subsequently, I'm really glad you mentioned the stock market with that, the dike track, because, there are no stocks anywhere in this game. But
right.
Subsequently, what I've realized is this is a shared incentives game. And I loved this game, and I couldn't figure out why. Back in 2018, 2019, if you asked me about train games, I would have said, please, no, like absolutely not. One of my hard vetoes. Like I just thought I hated games with stocks, hate like all that kind of stuff. It I just didn't like it. But then I love this game called Lowlands, and I can't really figure out why. And as I've gone through my board gaming hobby, I've noticed certain games over the last like 15 years that I just love for reasons I can't put my finger on. And then in 2020, I realized, oh, actually, I love Cube Rails games. I love stocks. I guess it was more 2021. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, I totally see why I loved Lowlands, because it's all about that interaction. It's all about, I could do this, but it helps you. So maybe I'll do that instead so that you do it. Like,
yeah.
I really enjoy that in some games, you're just like, why would I build a dike? That makes no sense. You have so many sheep. I want them to drown.
Yeah.
It's this ecosystem. Right. And again, there's no stocks in here at all, but it still gets to the heart of that shared incentive mindset where you are all interacting in a really fascinating ecosystem way where everything you do is going to ripple into what your opponents does. And sure, sometimes you're, denying opponents things like you build a building they wanted to build or something like that. But more often than not, you do something that's just going to affect everything. And so, somebody does this or like, I'm going to build this and you ask somebody to share and they don't. And you're like, oh no. And they say no because, they want the flood to happen or something like that. Right. It's just a really smart game. And I'm really glad you brought it up because I kind of forgot about it. And now we're talking about it, getting all pumped up. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I need to get this one played again.
Yeah.
We own it. It's been years and it is such a cool game. I will say the only supposed flaw with the game, I haven't tried it, but I've heard it's quite poor at 2 players, which also leans into the shared incentive thing where most shared incentives games are 3+ players.
Right.
And so I've played Lowlands at 3 and 4 and it was excellent at both of those counts. I've never even tried it at 2, but I have it through good reports that it's probably not great at that count.
Yeah.
But hey, that's still fine.
Yeah, I could see that. And I'm totally fine with just like breaking it out with 3 or 4.
There's so many good 2-player games. You just play something else.
Exactly. So that's Lowlands. What else you been playing lately, John?
So trains, right? I just talked about them. Me falling in love with Cube Rails and train game type shared incentive games. And so there's this game, one of my favorite of the train games, and also arguably Cube Rails games, is a game called Dual Gauge. It came out in 2020, designed by Amabel Holland, published by Holland Spiel. It's a 3 to 5 player game, and I really love this game with a pretty heavy asterisk. Before I get to the asterisk, though, have you played this one before?
I have not. I have always wanted to because I love Holland Spiel games, but I just, for whatever reason, have not gotten to play Dual Gauge yet.
Sure. So this is a brilliant, streamlined, in my opinion, version of 18xx games. And I know some people really bounce off that. Like, I just said that, and I know at least one person just like
cringing.
They're cringing because this game does some things that are kind of opposite to a lot of 18xx games as well. But in my opinion, it gets to the heart of the fun of what I enjoy about 18xx games. But the game dual gauge is like 60 to 120 minutes, as opposed to being 5 to 8 hours long. Now, I am not an 18xx gamer. I played 4 of them, so I have some experience, but like, I'm much more a fan of cube rails and like I said, the 60 to 90 minute gaming experiences. But what dual gauge does that most cube rails games don't is it really puts you into the mindset of the company running. So in most 18xx games and dual gauge, you have a series of companies, and players are going to buy stocks in those companies. And then the player who has a majority of stocks in that company will run that company. So the players themselves don't take turns. The companies take turns. So when it's the red company's turn, whoever controls the red company gets to do stuff with the red company. And other people might own red stock, but they don't have the majority of red stock. And so what they do is going to be affected by what the president does. And then boom, shared incentives, right? It's a fully competitive game. You want to have the most money at the end, but you have these things jostling back and forth. But the thing that sets dual gauge apart from all other cube rails games, as far as I can think of, is it has neutral track. So in cube rails games, generally the cube is the rail. I mean, it's right there in the title, right? You put a red cube down and it's a red rail for the red company, and only the red company can use it. Maybe the blue company can lease through it or something like that, but it's a red cube. But in dual gauge, the tracks are neutral. So any company can use those tracks, which is, again, kind of similar to 18xx games, where you're putting hexes down that any company can travel through. There's also blocking, where you can put stations on these different spots and then stop other train companies from running through. And then probably the biggest thing that shares some DNA between these is you actually get trains, and you buy them and you put them onto the company. So the red company has trains. You don't have trains, the red company does. And then you use those trains to run routes on those neutral tracks, which is what you do in 18xx games.
Totally.
So there's definitely some things that are different. Like the way you run the routes are different. The way you use those trains can break a bunch of 18xx players' brains for reasons I won't bore you with right now. So it's kind of one of those situations where I almost feel like dual gauge is almost better for people who haven't played 18xx, so they won't get confused by the differences.
Gotcha.
But if they're like curious to try 18xx, I think playing dual gauge first is probably good. And then you could play 18xx and be like, oh, okay, this is bigger,
I like this
broader,
stuff.
whatever.
Yeah.
So at the very beginning of this, I said I love this game with an asterisk, and that is that I don't love the 2 maps that come in the base game. So when you buy this game, it has 2 maps, and in my opinion, they're just fine. They're not particularly exciting, and because of that, I know quite a few people have tried them, and they've said, "Oh, I thought I'd like dual gauge more than I did, but it was just a little bit bland or something like that." But there are currently 2 map packs of double maps, so essentially 4 new maps that have come out, and I know there's a couple more maps that are planning on coming out soon. I think they're planning on putting 2 maps out a year for the foreseeable future. And
cool.
Every single one of the expansion maps that I played, I have loved. And so specifically, the last 2 weeks, I played dual gauge twice, both with the Wisconsin map, which comes from the first of the expansion map sets. And it is so cool. I love this one so much. It has diesel trains. So if you're familiar with the 18xx games, you've got diesels in Wisconsin, just Wisconsin, like the other maps don't have that. And that's another thing I love about dual gauge as a system, because you put the map on the table in front of you, and it has these modifier rules, these specific things that are all different for that one map to the next. So again, you have diesels in Wisconsin, but then if you play England and Wales, you have passenger trains, which are like sort of diesels, but just for passenger spots over in these certain specific spots. When you play on some of the other maps, you have things like bridges you have to build over, or like developments you have to put down. There's just all these different incentives, and I just love it. I could ramble on about it for a lot longer, but I will continue to ramble. Dang it! So
I love it. Keep going.
I was going to stop myself.
Get me hype.
Every one of those companies has an asymmetric effect as well, which also kind of gets you into a little bit of what a lot of 18xx games have with minor companies and major companies, where you can get these minor companies at the beginning, and then you kind of like sell them into the majors and combine them. Well, in dual gauge, it's kind of like they're sold in there already. You already got these little things, and they're not crazy usually. Sometimes they're like, oh, this one company gets a payout if it reaches this one spot, or they get a reserved station in this one other place. Or sometimes they are crazy. Like on one track, one company can sell trains. That's it. You can never sell trains in any other map with any other company, but here's this one map where you could sell trains, and that's just like cool. A brain exploding kind of thing. And you have other companies that can like lay track way faster, or they get better payouts when they go over rough terrain, which is more expensive, and blah 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 blah. There's just so many asymmetric things that are in here, and again, it's just like one big piece of paper, essentially the map that's going to change so much of this. So I love this game, and I'm so excited that I got to play it 2 Saturdays in a row with the same map, and I got to see completely different game states with those 2 maps as well. I've been talking about this game. It's called Dual Gauge, and I haven't even talked about the dual gauges. I should probably wrap this up, though.
Tell me about the dual gauges, John.
Fine. There's narrow gauge and there's standard gauge, and you can lay these different types of gauges down. And like I said, the track is all neutral. But again, there's narrow and standard, and you can only run a standard train on a standard track and a narrow train on a narrow track. So you can still really mess with things. If you see somebody making a standard track out to wherever, you slap a narrow gauge right at the end of it, and suddenly that's really going to jam things up in a variety of really interesting ways. The standard trains and standard track is more efficient, but it's more expensive. There's just so many of these things that all knock around in just brilliant ways. That there's so many other things that work so well. And I just want to, tell people about it because, I don't think it got a particularly a large amount of hype. And it is a little bit of a tough sell for me to sit here and say, you should totally play Dual Gauge with an expansion map. Like,
right.
You're free to play it with one of the base maps, but I just want people to know who do that, like the other maps out there offer even more interesting decisions and variety and asymmetric effects and whatnot. And this is arguably my favorite Cube Rails game, but also I think there's an argument to be made that it's not a Cube Rails game at all. It's just a shorter train game, that takes 60 to 90 minutes because it's so different than most Cube Rails games out there. And anyway, this is not a podcast about Cube Rails, so I should probably wrap it up. It's cool, and I would love to play it more. Maybe you and I could get to play it at some point.
I would love to. So you just got me extra excited. Like Dual Gauge, when I first heard of it, when I first heard about it, I was like, this is going to be a game that I definitely want to try. I do love me some 18xx, but it's hard to get those games to the table, and I'm not that big of a fan of doing the async thing on 18xx.games all the time. I'd rather be in person or just, play real time, even if we're going to play online. But that, shared incentive, I think you were saying, like, I love those kind of games as well. I love like market manipulation. Everything you said just sounded super exciting. And I love that, again, like Dual Gauge, in a similar way to 18xx, like there's like a system, but like you can play a different map or a different version and it tweaks.
System, exactly.
That sounds awesome. So
there's train resting.
Awesome.
But if you play on England and Wales, the way the trains rest is completely different and bananas. Like you can even rest the best trains in the game. Yeah.
I'm gonna get this as soon as we stop recording. I'm serious. And also I'm also just wondering how many other games you're gonna have me buying after today. That sounds awesome. So thank you for mentioning it. And I love hearing your excitement for it. And it definitely, again, pushed this up on my radar because I've always known about it and I always knew that it would be something I liked. I just have not tried it yet, but now I'm going to.
I'll give you the push.
Yeah, I appreciate the push. So, kind of on a different end of the spectrum, I ended up playing last weekend a big, epic kind of 4X civilization building game called Europa Universalis, The Price of Power. This is a game that is based on a PC game series from Paradox Interactive. And it's basically a 4X civ building game with a historical setting. And it's designed by Ivan Vetlesen. And it actually has a solo mode by David Terzi, which I have not tried, but I think it's really cool that a big, epic, heavy civ building game has a solo mode. And I've read that it's like really cool too. So it'd be cool to try that at some point. But Europa Universalis is published by Agir Games, and it plays with 1 to 4 players, but you can also play with up to 6 players with the Fates of Empires expansion. I actually demoed this game at Spiel last year, 2022, and I enjoyed it. I was like, wow, there's a lot going on, but there was also a lot that kind of tingled my brain. And they were nice enough to send me a copy of the deluxe edition so I could kind of check it out. And I've had it for like a couple months, but I knew it was going to take a long time to learn it. I knew it was going to take kind of a long time to dig into it and play it. And I just hadn't had the time until recently that I made the time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you have this like large map of like mostly Europe, and during setup, you'll put out all these town discs. Like you have 2 different size towns, small towns and large towns, and like kind of having them off of your player board will increase your income. So it's good to, have your towns on, you're kind of like controlling these different provinces by having your town marker on them. Everyone has their own like player board and multiple player boards actually, because you have like different boards where you'll manage your armies. You have boards where you're kind of managing these action cubes you have, which are monarch powers. So you have like administrative ones, and then you have diplomatic action cubes or monarch powers, and then military. And you use them to kind of take actions throughout the game and play action cards. I will definitely say this game is a bit of a table hog. 4 players playing this took up my whole entire table, and I can get a 6-player game of Twilight Imperium on my table. So if you know the size of Twilight Imperium,
it's huge.
This ends up being a kind of a sprawling game. It looks epic. It looks really epic, but it's definitely like a bit overwhelming. So in the game, your goal is to build the most successful empire, and AKA you want to have the most victory points at the end of the game. You can play, like, it has a ton of different scenarios. We played the 1444 introductory scenario, where I was playing as Austria. We had 1 player was France, 1 was England, and 1 was Castile. And that particular intro scenario is played over 2 ages, and each age is 4 rounds. So technically playing that introductory scenario would be 8 rounds. We did not quite make it that far because we have 4 new players. Like we ended up playing, it was very much a learning game, but we played 3 rounds of the first age. And then people had to like go and had evening plans, so we couldn't. Oh, and that took us over 5 hours, by the way.
Oh, geez.
Yeah,
okay.
That took us over 5 hours.
A little bit of context.
Yeah, but you score points in this game like a lot of different ways. For any provinces you own. Again, having your town discs on provinces. For exploring territories, there are different like diplomatic relations points you can get. You can get points from victories and wars. You have these secret mission cards, which are cool. They're basically just secret objectives, and that adds some spice because you never know what people are going for. And then you can also get points that are like public objectives, which are like milestones. And then you could research ideas, which is like tech track kind of stuff. And the first person to like research a particular idea gets 2 points, and then every other person who researches it after gets 1 point. They get 1 point too. Right. So it's like you're incentivized to kind of be the first to research an idea that other players are going to want to also research.
Seems like the kind of game where you can't do everything.
No, especially not in your first
I've not played
play.
it. I've just been looking at some images on Board Game Geek as you've been talking.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow,
it's
a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. And it feels like a sandbox type game. Where you can kind of like choose what you want to focus on, which is interesting. Like one player kind of focused more on exploration, and there were France and England were kind of going at it and battling a little bit. I was just kind of in my own world, figuring out things, just trying to complete milestones because the rules are kind of the rule book is like 47 pages, and I felt like even after reading the rules, you still are like, how does this game gonna play? What am I doing?
Start back over on page 1.
Yeah, it's very opaque. I think it's like one of those games where you like read the rules, you play it, and you still have to constantly reference the rules for certain things.
Yeah.
And then you play it again, and then it's like, oh, But I had everybody watch Shay from RTFMs. He has an excellent instructional video. that is 50 minutes long, and it doesn't even cover everything. Like there's some points where he's just like, yeah, if you want to learn more about this, read this page.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, there's just a lot going on. And then every round there are lots of different phases. You'll like reveal new event cards, draw action cards. And then the bulk of the game is you're taking actions. And when you're taking actions, like you have this menu of basic actions you can take that some are just kind of generic, but some of them fall into those like monarch power buckets I was telling you about, like military. Like if you want to recruit different military units or ships, you would need to spend your military action cubes or power cubes. And likewise, you have these action cards, which are cool because the actions will have some kind of action that you can play on your turn by spending, again, these monarch cubes that match the type of action it is. But they also, at the bottom of them, will have like a character that you can either appoint as an advisor, which will kind of give you more monarch power income and maybe some other special ability. But then you could also recruit, some of them are like generals that you'll add to your army, and they let you roll more powerful dice and extra dice when you're doing combat. So I love that about the action cards, how they're kind of dual use. Then another thing that I really loved, and I think everybody like really loved this too, was the event card system. So at the beginning of every round, you take out 5 event cards. This is a number of players plus 1, but you only reveal 3 of them at once. So everybody sees those 3 events. You can't pass until you trigger an event. And sometimes, so the events have usually like 2 effects that whoever is triggering it can choose.
Sure.
And sometimes it might impact other players. It might impact your faction. And then also beneath the event, at the bottom of the card, there's some kind of like global impact that will kind of be triggered. But let's say I take an event. I'm the first one to do it. I do the event. Then we put 2 ducats on every other face-up event, and then we reveal 1 more. So now there are always 3 open, and some will have money on them, which is like making them more tempting because
gotta get those incentives going.
Yeah. But it was, I think, like the event card system was just really cool, and the events and some of like the decisions of the timing of when to do something, sometimes not wanting someone else to trigger something. So it's like, oh, I better beat that person to this so that they don't choose this particular option. That was really cool. But yeah, otherwise, like it was really cool. Like our brains, you're talking like Horseless Carriage is kind of brain burnery. Like this is that times 10
times 4, right? 4x game.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's what the 4x is. Yeah, so it was definitely very, even after everybody watched the video, I didn't really do a teach because everybody watched the video, and we were just like, let's just get into it. We'll learn as we go by taking actions. And we definitely, like, our first round was super slow, and then we were like, okay, I'm getting the swing of it. And we were just all trying to like, use in games like this. I just try to say, look, how do we earn victory points? Focus on that. Like, what am I going to do to achieve this milestone? Like, I'm going to just focus on that. And I think like my one friend, Brandon, like who played it, it was funny. Like when he started watching the video, he messaged on Discord. He's like, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah. Is it too late to run away screaming?
Yeah, exactly. It was good company. So that kind of helped everything too, for us to kind of have a first learning experience. And, I love like big, heavy games like this that are kind of epic. I wish that there was a more intro-y scenario or a playbook with an example of play so that I could have had a better grasp on it before they came over. Because I think it would have been a smoother experience altogether. Like if I had already played, if I had some more experience so that I could kind of answer questions or help guide people, nobody really knew what to do initially. And then, as we got going, we kind of figured it out. But the important thing is, like, the next morning, I was kind of like, I'm ready to play Age 2. Like, I was kind of craving it, You're like, when you're in that situation, you're like learning, your brain is just like, I don't know exactly, we're probably making some mistakes here and there. But then I'm pretty sure we all were thinking about it that night, that next morning. And personally, like if it was set up and they were down to come back over, I would have played it again. So it's like this is a hard one that's going to be hard to get to the table, but I'm definitely curious to explore it more. Like I have a lot of friends who are totally down for like heavy games like this, and we'll make sure next time that we have more of a full day to kind of at least play both ages to see how things pan out.
This is definitely an event game, right? You're not bringing this to a pickup game night.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You're scheduling this.
Exactly. And, hopefully everybody does their homework, because I think it would be, if you were just doing a bare bones teach, I think it would take, at least an hour to kind of like make sure people, maybe not.
That doesn't surprise me.
Maybe not. Maybe you could get into it a little quicker, especially if somebody like knows the game really well. But anyway, I assume you have not played it, and that is...
I had never even heard of it before you started talking about it. That's why I was looking at Board Game Geek while you were talking.
Yeah.
And it looks like a big 4X game.
It's a beast. So like if you're into big like civilization games that, where you're kind of like, you'll take a day probably and play with your friends, this is definitely one to check out. Also, it plays with lower player counts too. Like there's a bot, and again there's that solo mode where if you're someone who likes to play these games solo, like this is, I don't know another civilization building game, I don't think, that it has a solo mode like this, and it's by David Turtzi, so that's probably cool. So anyway, that is Europa Universalis, the Price of Power. I wanted to before we get into trick taking games, I wanted to give a quick brief shout out to Bullet Heart and Bullet Star. Have you played either of those games?
No, I'm a little bit familiar with them. They're kind of a match 3 kind of video gamey vibe.
Yeah, like a shoot 'em up puzzle kind of game where you're simultaneously drawing these like bullets and you're dropping them in on your board, but you're also trying to like use action points to manipulate them into patterns and then send them over to the player on your left. And so anyway, I'm not going to talk much about it because Liz Davidson brought this up. Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire on episode 12 when we were talking about solo games. She highly recommended it as a solo game for people who like puzzle games. And also my friend Jennifer Schlickburn, she had mentioned it from Mavina YouTube channel. She had mentioned it a while ago that she liked it. And for whatever reason, I finally picked it up, and I'm just so hype about it. I've only played it like twice so far because you could play it like really fast. But it is a super fun puzzle game. So I just wanted to mention that one too, just very, very briefly. So shall we talk about some trick-taking games, John?
Yes, let's talk about cards.
Yes.
So you've been mentioning trick-taking games a lot, and most of the games we're going to be talking about are trick-taking games. But I am going to be talking about a couple climbing shedding games. So at a really brief, high level, trick-taking games are card games, frequently with a standard deck of cards, where everybody plays one card in some sort of turn order, and then whoever played the Xist card, like strongest, weakest, second to strongest, whatever, solo card, whatever, one card is going to be the person who takes the trick, and they usually take all the cards and then they play another card. So it's like one card, and then if everybody has 12 cards, then you're all going to play your 12th card at the same time. Whereas climbing shedding games are also card games, frequently with a standard deck of cards, but for these, your hands will get asymmetric because you're playing more like poker hands, depending on the game, like, a 3 of a kind or a run of 5 cards or a full house or something like that. And if I play 3 of a kind, then somebody else could pass, or they could play a better 3 of a kind on top of mine. And generally, the goal of these games is to shed out. That's why they're frequently called climbing shedding games, because the climbing is where, your 3 6s beat my 3 2s will be climbed. We climbed up in strength, essentially. And then shedding is the goal. It's like get rid of all your cards, usually, and then you get points for in some way for getting rid of your cards. So they're very different schools of thought in traditional card games, and I want to get that out of the way before we dig into all of these. Yeah, and before we dig into our list of, and again, these aren't our favorite trick-taking games per se, but it's just
games that we think are very interesting in some way.
Yes. Yeah. Some peculiar part that we think is worth shouting about from the top of the mountain.
Yep. And so before we get to the first game you want to talk about, I just wanted to do 2 quick honorable mentions of games that sound interesting to me, but I haven't played yet. One is Inside Job, which is a new game that is either about to come out or might have just come out from designed by Tanner Simmons, and it's from Cosmos, who that's the company who published The Crew, which is an amazing cooperative trick-taking game. And Inside Job is an almost cooperative trick-taking game because basically players are working together. Well, most players are working together to complete as many missions as possible, but one player is secretly trying to sabotage it because they're an insider. So I'm very curious to see how this one plays out. When I had a meeting during, I think it was PAX Unplugged or something, I kind of got a rundown of it. So I'm looking forward to trying that one. And then also, we're shouting out Taylor a lot here, but at BGGCon, I sat, I think at like 3 a.m, it might have been at 4 a.m. at this point, a teach of a crazy trick-taking game called Touchdown Heroes, designed by Kuru and published by Manifest Destiny. And this is a 4-player trick-taking game where you are playing football. So it's teams, 2 versus 2, and basically one team at a time is like on offense, the other's on defense. And when you're on offense, I think you're like leading the trick, and you could either say if you're going to do it as a pass play or run play. And I think one or the other means you must follow, and the opposite one means you may follow. But like, I think when you do the may follow, like the cards all have effects, and the effects on the cards kind of trigger. It seemed wild, but then you also have this card in the middle of the table that looks like a little football field, and then you have this little wooden football that's like moving up and down as you're playing so tricks. Cool. You're like moving the football, and you're playing. And I think the card art is all this like wild like anime art. But yeah, I ended up getting this, and I still haven't tried it. And I thinking about it today and thinking about interesting trick-taking games, I'm like, why have I not tried that one yet? So that is Touchdown Heroes.
I haven't tried either of those. They both sound fun. As far as honorable mentions are concerned from my side of things, I just wanted to say that I've recently been falling in love with Spades, which is this like super traditional 100-year-ish old trick-taking game partnership. I'm not going to be talking about it in the list down below, but I've been really digging that. And also, I'm not going to be talking about Tichu. And people might be expecting one of us to talk about Tichu, right, which is kind of the quintessential, one of the more popular anyway, climbing shedding games. It's arguably my favorite game of all games. Period. So I adore it. I like it better than every game I'm going to be talking about on this list, but I think the games I'm talking about later on might be more interesting mechanically. So anyway, cool. I got the Tichu elephant out of the room.
I need to also play more Tichu, because when I first was taught Tichu, I was like fell in love with it. I bought the app on the iPad. I got, and I just really haven't played it much since. But it's like
I've played 200+ times.
That's amazing.
I adore it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I need to get into that more. So what's the first game on your list?
Yeah, so number 5 of like interesting card games is also a climbing shedding game. It's called Hachi Train. Have you heard of this one?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't think so.
That's not too surprising. This is the most esoteric of the 5 games I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to apologize right out the gate by saying I love this game, and you cannot buy it.
Oh no, Jonathan!
It's not out there. You just and so this is it's a wonderful, relatively light game that has some Scout vibes, and in a lot of ways, it's fired Scout for me. I've played Hachi Train like 16 times in the last year, and yeah, I've just been really into it. So
cool.
Much like Scout and like Delta or Crass Cart. This is a game where you get Delta-handed cards and you cannot change the order of the cards. So the game is called Hachi Train, which is 8. So there are 8 different cards in the deck. It's 1 through 8. And yeah, you're going to get this hand of cards. You have 8 cards in your hand. And the goal is just to go out not last. And that's one thing I really like about it. And one of the reasons I want to talk about it here, because a lot of climbing Shedda games are all about going out first. Scout, go out first. Tichu, go out first and make bets on it. But in Hachi Train, if you go out, that's fine. And you keep playing until one person hasn't gone out and they lose. So instead of winning by being the first person to play all your cards, you just don't want. It's like hot potato. You don't want to be stuck holding the potato or musical chairs. And when that happens, that person, they lose $100 million. So not a big deal. Fortunately, you're given $200 million at the beginning of the game. So you just play until somebody loses all their money, which effectively means you play until one person has been the last person twice. And then that person loses and everybody else wins. It's a really interesting thing. You play a 5-player game of it. It's a 3 to 5 player game. If you play a 5-player game, 4 people are winning and 1 person is losing. So you just don't want to be that person. Now, it has other really cool things going on. And that is that you're playing out just sets. There's no runs or anything like that. It's very simple in that way. And you have to play cards that are adjacent in this mixed up hand. But the key, really interesting thing, the main reason I'm talking about it now is because when I beat your cards, let's say, Candice, you put like 2 2s out. I could play 4 1s, for example. It's larger, so it means I win. But then I have to take your 2 2s and put them back into my hand. And that is the main brain explode moment for this game. Every time you win, you take the cards that you beat and put them back into your hand. Remember, you need to get rid of cards. So it's very possible to downgrade your hand by playing. Like if you play 2 2s and I beat it with 2 4s, I take your 2 2s and now I don't have the 4s and I have 2s. Right. So if I didn't have other 2s in my hand overall might have just gotten worse. But maybe I had 3 2s already. So now I have 5 2s. And now I can drop that down to continue this thing on. And I just love that. It's kind of like Scout, but different. Because in Scout, you either play cards or you pull cards into your hand, constructing your hand. In this one, you play cards and then bring your cards into your hand. If you don't play a card, you actually draw a card from the top of a deck. Or if the deck is gone, you just don't draw anything. So it's a really breezy game in a lot of ways. I kind of consider it more of like a beer and pretzels experience over Scout. I think Scout is a little bit thinkier. Scout might be, I take it back. Scout is definitely a deeper game. It's definitely a thinkier game overall, but I found myself coming back to Hachi Train over and over and over again because it's just so easy. It's a lean back in your chair, throw cards around and laugh kind of game. And I just really like it. I've played it, like I said, like 16 times now.
What is the makeup of the cards? Like how many suits and what are
there's no suits. It's just 1 through 8. And then you have a number of that times the player count. So that's actually another really interesting thing about the game is it does a lot with a really small deck. If it's a 3-player game, it's just 1 through 8 3 times. It's a 24 card deck. Then there's this side deck. There's 8 cards. I don't need to go into all the details, but you could draw from, and there's always 8 cards in that one. But that means you have this tiny deck. But since you keep pulling cards into your hand, it's almost like there's a 60 card deck. You keep reusing cards. You play those 2s and I beat them, they come into my hand, and then I play them and somebody else beats them. Like there are cards that will be in every single person's hand before the end of the round. And I think that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. And what I was getting at is it sounds like something that I could make on my own.
Yes. So there is an asterisk to that. That deck of cards that you draw from on the side, it's got these slash cards that when you draw them, they say 1/2 or 3/4, 5/6, 7/8. And when you take them, you decide, you put it in your hand and it can be one or the other. So that means you have some extra flexibility with these things. And certainly when you play these out, then people might want to win those back to then use those flexibly in their hand as well. But it makes it a little bit harder to proxy, I will admit. But this also leads me to something that I wasn't sure if I was going to mention it, but whatever.
Now do it.
There's this game coming out called Nana Toridori. It's coming out in 2 or 3 weeks, same designer, and it's essentially Hachi Train 2. It's my understanding it's going to be a lot more available. I think it's just going to have a lot more distribution than Hachi Train did, but it is different in some key ways. And I think there's going to be people who are going to be militant on either side of the Hachi Train versus Nana Toridori lines. In particular, the new one is 1 to 7, not 1 to 8. And also in the new one, when you beat somebody else's cards, you don't have to bring their cards back into your hand. You can, but you don't have to. So I haven't played this yet, so I cannot endorse it in any way, but I will say it does not have those 1/2, 3/4 cards. So that one, certainly you could proxy relatively easily.
Okay.
But I also think there's a chance it could be even more easygoing and perhaps fun than Hachi Train. I don't know. I do love Hachi Train. I love the decision of bringing cards back into my hand that I hate. So I'm not really sure where I'm going to land on it. But it is a sort of version that I think some people would argue is just a completely different game, whereas other people will say, it's similar enough to call it the same. Yeah.
Hey, if it's going to be available and that's our only option to get something in that vein.
It is a key difference. It is a key difference. Yeah. So yeah, that's been a really fun one. Honestly, I bought this one on a whim. I was putting in an order through a Japanese freight forwarder for Trick and Trade, which is a game I'm not going to be talking about, even though I totally could. It's a super cool may follow trick-taking game with stocks. And I saw there's this game called Hachi Train. I'm like, I like trains. And it was like an extra like $20. So I just threw it on my order without even knowing the rules because the rules weren't even published yet.
Oh, wow.
And so I got really lucky that I happened to love that one.
Wait, what was the other one you just said?
Trick and Trade. Have you heard of this one?
Trick and Trade. No.
Okay. You know what?
Tell
I'm
me.
Need to talk about 6 games.
Just tell me real quick. Give me the lowdown.
All right. So my game number 4.5 is Trick and Trade. I haven't done my research, so I don't have the designer or the publisher in front of me. But this is a brilliant shared incentive stocks trick-taking game.
Oh. I want it.
So the way this game works, like I said, it's a may follow game. So it's a trick-taking game where most trick-taking games, if somebody plays like a heart, you have to play a heart as well if you have a heart in your hand. And if you don't have a heart in your hand, you could play anything. That's called must follow because you must follow the card that was led. Most of the games we're going to be talking about today, in fact, maybe all of them are must follow.
I have one may follow.
Oh, you do? Okay, good. So this is a may follow where you could play any card. Doesn't matter what anybody else did. But then there are these stock cards off to the side. And so the cards that you play have numbers on them. I think they range from 1 to 9. But then they have a second smaller number that's inversely proportional to the main number. So it'll be like a 1, 3, I think. And then like the 2 is like a 2, 2. And then the 9 is like a 9, 1. And the 10, I think it goes to 10 is 10, 0. Anyway, when you play this game, what you do is the person who plays the highest value of the card that was led is going to win that trick. But then we're all going to be drafting stocks in the shared incentive thing in the order in which the strength of the cards are played, and then the card that won goes into a market at the top. And it's sorted depending on that second number. So the stronger the number is, the weaker it is in this majorities market. And then at the end of the game, it's a one-hand game. You deal out like 9 cards or 10 cards or 11 cards. You play that, that's it. And then you score. And you check the majorities for the cards that won. And then the suit with the most value in that secondary number is going to pay out the most, then second most, third most, and then the fourth one, the worst one, actually is a negative payout if I remember correctly.
Nice.
and then, like I said, in the order in which you played these cards or the strength of your cards, you take these stock cards, and every card has 2 stocks on them. They're either the same 2 stocks or 2 different stocks. So you're getting this shared portfolio, kind of forced because you're going to be forced to taking cards with multiple stocks on them, and you just get plunged directly into the shared incentive wonderful quagmire of decisions. And the late game can be super tense as, people are holding out on like those 2s to try and win a trick and then lead like the 2 or the 1 when there's no more of that card out there, so nothing can beat it. And then it drastically alters the stock market. Like I've been winning on the second to last trick and then come dead last in the last trick because of the things that can manipulate around. But the whole game takes 20 to 30 minutes because it's one hand. And
that's
it's
awesome.
Super cool.
That sounds really cool. That sounds right up my alley.
It was a good order. I bought that one in Hachi Train and a game called Nana, which I'm not talking about today because it's not a trick taker or a climber.
Control yourself, anyway. Jonathan.
I have to control myself. Have you played any card games? Do you have anything you want to say?
I will talk about a card game. So the first one on my list is the game that we played together, Nokosu Dice. This is a 2016 release from Quoth Games, and there's also a 2019 version by N Games, and it's designed by Yusuke Matsumoto, and it plays with 3 to 4 players, and this is a trick-taking game with cards, as most trick-taking games have, but you also have dice that are different colored dice. And at the beginning of the game, you are dealt a hand of cards, and then you will also draft dice. So you put a bunch of, like, I think there's purple, yellow, red, green, and black, maybe, or something like that.
I think there's 5 suits, if I remember correctly.
5 suits. I don't remember exactly. But you put some dice, a certain amount of dice in the bag based on the player count, and then you take a certain amount out, and you're going to draft them one at a time, and they just go in front of you. And they're basically, the dice are an extension of your hand. So if I have a purple card in my hand, but I might have purple dice that I could play as a purple card when somebody leads. And this is must follow, right?
Yes, it is very importantly, because those dice are essentially public cards.
Yes.
So if you lead purple and the person to your left of you has a purple die, they're playing a purple.
Yeah.
It could be a purple from their hand, but if they play that purple die, then you're like, oh, maybe they don't have any purple in their hand. Or maybe they do. You won't know until later, but it gives you a lot of control seeing, like a quarter to a third of your opponent's hands. I can't remember the exact numbers.
Yeah.
But at the very beginning.
It's quite interesting. And then at the very beginning of the game, you're going to kind of decide if you think you are going to be able to win no tricks or not win any tricks. You kind of declare that publicly at the beginning, and you have this kind of card that you'll flip to one side to indicate that, and you'll actually get rid of, I think, one of your dice at that point. Yes. One of your dice at that point goes away. You get to choose. Because at the end of the game, or at the end of the round, after you play a hand of where you play all your cards from your hand and all your dice in front of you, and you can play them in any order that you want, except, yes, it's a must follow game. So sometimes you will be forced to play your dice if somebody plays a color and you don't have that color in your hand. But whichever die is last to be played from you ends up being your bid of how many tricks you think you're going to win. For the round, which is kind of crazy because you have to kind of like be careful that you're not forced to play something that, if you like, and you also think about this as you're drafting your dice, like if I think I'm going to be able to win 5 tricks, then I definitely want to make sure I have some 5 dice in my die, my die pool here, because that way I can hopefully spend all of my dice or use all of my dice and save 1 5, make my bid 5, and not, happen to win 5 tricks. And all the stars align, and I get bonus points if I do that.
Yeah. So technically, you don't play that last die. You keep playing dice until you have 1 left, and then it evaporates. It is no longer a die. It is now your bid, and that is also public. So there's definitely situations in this I've played this a couple times, once with you, and then I actually played it just a couple of weeks ago with a copy that I bought after we played. And you have situations where if you have 2 dice in front of you, like a yellow and a red, and the opponent to the right of you is leading, they could look over and see that you're about to make your red bid, but that yellow bid is way off, and they could lead a red card knowing that you might be forced to play your red die to follow, locking in the yellow die as your bid, and you might be already blowing past that, or maybe it's just like way past anything you could get. So it has this precious element where you have to be really precious with the dice that are in front of you. and you have to just make sure to play them at the right pace. Like if you just play cards and you find yourself with no cards and just dice, then people can see right through you. But if you play your dice too quickly, then you're going to lock in on a bid early before you potentially know how you could actually win the bid. So you have to try and thread that needle. And the way the scoring works, it's just 1 point per trick, but then you get a pile of points if you exactly hit your bid, although you get more points the less people who hit their bids.
Right.
But it is all about hitting your bid.
Yeah, and exactly, managing your hand and your dice. And it's super interesting the way it plays out. And after we played it for the first time at BGG-Con, I was like, how do I get this game? So I ended up, I don't remember if Taylor or someone suggested, but I ended up buying an extra deck of Stick'em, and I made my own version, and I bought some dice, like those kind of like Sagrada dice.
Pretty easy to proxy,
yeah. And I made my own copy. But then at the Cloud Cap games, I was able to get an imported copy. Yeah. So now I have a legit copy of the game too. And I think I passed on my little proxy version to a friend. But yeah, this is a cool one to check out. Definitely like makes you kind of think a little differently.
Yeah, there's one other thing that I really want to highlight about Nokosu Dice, which is super cool. And that is that when you're drafting dice at the beginning, first of all, you have to roll 2 dice randomly. You draw 2 random dice, roll them.
Forgot about that, yes.
Cards. And then you're drafting dice until there's 1 die left in the market.
Yes,
and that gets put off to the side. Yeah. And this is so cool because this defines Trump. But not only does it define Trump, it defines Super Trump and what I call Super Duper Trump. And this is one of the hardest parts of the game to really wrap your head around. So the idea of Trump suits in trick-taking games, it's a classic idea. But if you're not familiar with it, in games with Trump, usually the highest card of the lead suit is going to win the trick. But if any of the cards are the Trump suit, then the highest Trump suit is going to win. So it kind of lets you jump out of that whole system. And in Nokosu Dice, let's say a red 3 was the last die that wasn't picked. You put it off to the side. And what that means is all red cards and dice are Trump. So that means they're stronger than everything else.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, that means all 3s are Super Trump, which means every 3, it doesn't matter what color it is better than any red. And remember, any red is better than anything else that's not red or not a 3. And then finally, all red 3s are Super Duper Trumps because the red 3 beats any other 3.
Everything. Yeah.
And it's a bit of a brain explosion because all of these are technically Trump, which is technically its own suit, which means a yellow 3 in your hand is not a yellow anymore. It is a Trump 3.
Right.
And it's a really weird thing, and it can definitely catch people off guard with like leading and following and being like, oh, shoot, that's actually a Trump in this kind of situation. But it's also completely brilliant. And it makes the draft so interesting because you could be drafting and the dice are getting smaller and smaller, and you look over and somebody's got like 3 5s, and there's like 2 or more 5s out there, and you're like, I got to draft a 5 to make sure that 5 isn't Trump because they're gonna have so many Trumps.
Yeah.
Well, the same with the colors, and man, super cool overall. Just this game is just
I'm glad you mentioned that. I can't believe I forgot that little detail. But that is super cool, and it is definitely a little bit confusing initially to like wrap your head around. Wait, so this color is stronger than everything, but then this number is stronger than that, but then this number and this color is like super duper Trump.
Yeah, but then of course you can have doubles. You know, like if I have a red 3 in my hand and the red 3 dies out there, somebody else could have a red 3 die in front of them. And now there's multiple of the best card in the game, in which case the last one played, if there's a tie, wins. So you still have situations where you can't be positive that you're going to win, even if you have potentially the strongest thing in the hand. It's just a really smart game.
Yep, I agree. And that is Nokosu Dice. What else you got, John?
So the first game I talked about is almost impossible to buy, as I said. The second game I talked about, Trick and Trade, is close to impossible to get. The third game I'm talking about, you already have in your house if you have a standard deck of cards.
Yes.
So this is a game. It's called 99, and I love it. It's a standard deck game. You just need, the typical deck, 4 suits, 2 through ace. Now, this is technically a 2 to 4 player game designed by David Parlett in 1974 and published in the Games and Puzzles magazine because, again, it's a standard deck game. I say technically 2 to 4, though, because realistically, this is a 3-player game. It has 2-player and 4-player variants, but it's my understanding, I haven't tried them, but it's my understanding you just shouldn't do that. You should play something else at 2 or 4.
Gotcha.
But if you have 3 players and you're looking to play trick-taking games, I could not recommend this game higher because it has some really wacky ideas. All right, so you deal out this deck of cards. It's a short deck. It's actually, I think it's 6 through ace, if I'm remembering correctly. And you deal out these hands of cards to the 3 players. Everybody's going to have 12 cards in their hand at this point. Now, everybody simultaneously chooses 3 of those cards to make their bid. And the bid is going to be the number of tricks that you win at the end of the overall hand. So that you're going to have 9 cards. There's going to be 9 tricks after you pull these 3 out. And the way those cards dictate it is based off of the suit. Diamonds, which kind of look like a 0 if you think about it, are worth 0 bid. Then spades, they go up to a little pointy 1 at the top. They're worth 1. Hearts have 2 little roundy bits on the top. They're 2. And then clubs are worth 3 with the 3 little roundy bits on top. So what that means is if you put 3 clubs off to the side, that's a 9 bid. If you put 3 diamonds off to the side, it's a 0 bid. If you do diamond, spade, heart, it's a 3 bid. And you're all making this decision at the same time. So what it means is you have control over your hand. You can short suit yourself. You can do all sorts of crazy things because the cards you remove are going to dictate the texture of your hand. But then the game gets really cool. That's cool. That's all cool. But
I thought that was pretty cool.
Because those cards, you put them off face down in front of you, and then you could play a standard trick-taking game. You play a card down, and it's must follow. You have to follow the lead in. The trump is defined. I don't need to go into the details of that, but one of the suits are going to be trump, and you know that before you make your bid. And all that's well and good. And then you score at the very end. But you flip over at that point your bids, and so you don't know what everybody else's bid is, usually. And so you're playing this, and you're like trying to suss things out, and you're trying to hit your bid. But when you start playing this, before you play the first card, people have the ability to bet. And that's why I call this one Tichu, the trick-taking game, in a lot of ways, because I love Tichu, which is a climbing shedding game, not a trick taker in my opinion, very different in feel. But the main reason I love Tichu is because it's a game where you can call Tichu, and that is a 100-point bet in a game where you go to 1,000 that you will play all your cards first. Well, in 99, you have something similar. There are two different types of bets you can make. The first type of bet is a bid reveal. And you just say, I'm going to do a bid reveal, and then only one person can do this per hand. I don't need to go into the specifics. And if you do that, you reveal your bid. So the other two people have hidden bids, and you have a revealed bid. And if you make your bid, you get 30 extra points. And this game actually scores exactly like Nokosu Dice, funnily enough. 1 point per trick, and then the more people who hit their bids, the less points they get.
Gotcha.
So if you hit your bid, the best thing you could do hitting your bid is 30 points if you're the only person who did it. But if you reveal your bid and then hit it, you get 30 more points. It essentially doubles the number of points you can get. But what if you don't hit your bid? You're too high or too low. Both of your opponents get 30 points. Both of them.
Wow.
So it's a risk, and it really goes into in line with that Tichu thing. But I said there's two different kinds of bids, right? So let's say it's you, me, and then let's say Eric Martin from Board Game Geek. He's playing this with us.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
So it's, you say you don't want to bid anything. I say I'm willing to reveal my bid. It goes to Eric. He could say, I'm going to reveal my bid and my hand. And if they do this, it essentially takes precedence. So now I don't get to reveal my hand anymore. It's all Eric.
Right.
He reveals his bid, so we all know what he needs to hit, and he reveals his entire hand and plays open.
Whoa.
And if he hits his bid, 60 extra points. 6-0.
Wow.
But if he doesn't, then both other people get 60 extra points.
Oh my goodness, this is spicy.
This game is completely brilliant. And that's why it's spicy, exactly. And it's spicy because of these bets that you're making. Cool. It really gets into that like gambling mindset without money, which I really like. You got your ego on the line in a lot of ways. And you can have situations where you're like, oh, I think I just totally know how this hand's going to go. So you try to go for it. Or you might be behind and you're like, I guess I'm revealing my hand because, wow, I'm really far behind. And there's a lot of different ways to score this. Again, this game is, I didn't actually mention it, but it came out a long time ago. I might have said 1974, so many decades ago. And my favorite way to play this is you essentially do a bunch of short games to 100 points. So as soon as somebody hits over 100 points, they get a point, they win, quote unquote, a game, and you play until one person has won 2 games or one person has won 3 games. Cool. And then you reset. So you can take these really big swings. If somebody's close to 100, you're like, okay, well, I'm revealing my hand. I'm going to try to make it happen. And it is just so cool. So you have this awesome puzzle of trying to figure out how to bid based off of the cards you're removing from your hand. And on top of that, you have this awesome bidding thing, and you have pseudo partnership play because the 2 people who didn't bid, they kind of want to work together to break that other person because they both get the points unless one of them is about to cross 100, in which case maybe that person doesn't want that to actually happen. It's so complex for a game that's just 6 through ace and 4 suits. It's so completely cool. So this game I played mostly on Board Game Arena. It's available on Board Game Arena right now. I highly recommend it. That's actually how I was taught the game. But I've now played it in person with just a deck of cards many times. I think 3 or 4 times. And every person I've taught this to has loved it. It's cool. Such an impressive design. I am over the moon about it. And it's one more reason for me to bring my Tichu deck around, because a Tichu deck is a standard deck of cards plus 4 special wilds. So that means I've got Tichu and I have 99.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah. I could not recommend this one more. It is super worth checking out.
Yeah, I have not checked it out, and that's also good to know that it's on Board Game Arena. That's a bonus.
I got to end with one tiny anecdote.
Yeah.
Why is this game called 99?
I don't know.
I'm sure you are asking.
Yes, I am.
That's the maximum score. If you bid 3 clubs, that's 9 tricks, and if you win, you get 1 point per trick, and then you reveal your hand, and you hit your bid and nobody else does, it's 60 plus 30 plus 9, 99. It's the maximum score. The highest score I've seen is 95, and it was berserk. It was insane seeing that happen. And, exciting, even if it's not you, in much the same way some crazy Tichu calls can be. But anyway.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm going to try this
99.
one. Yeah, and it's awesome that you can just play with a standard deck of cards.
Yeah.
My next game, you cannot play with a standard deck of cards. The game I'm going to be talking about is Shamans, and this is a trick-taking game that mixes social deduction with trick-taking. It's designed by Cedric Chaboset, and it's published by Studio H, and it plays with 3 to 5 players. So basically, you're playing over a number of rounds until at least one person has 8 points, and then whoever has the most points wins. So this game, basically, when you get your hand of cards at the beginning of the round, you're also going to be dealt a roll card, and you're either going to be good, a shaman, or bad, a shadow. And, it just depends on the player count of how many shadows versus shaman players there are. But there's a small board that comes with this game. And on the board, you'll have this shadow pawn kind of almost in the middle, but the shadow player wants to kind of push it in one direction towards the end of the track where there's a moon, and the shaman players are trying to avoid that. Basically, the shamans are going to win a round if they manage to eliminate all of the baddies. All of the shadow players have to be eliminated.
What's the ratio? Like half and half, or like 1/3?
I want to say like in a 5-player game, it's 2 baddies and 3 shamans.
Okay.
Yeah.
So under half.
And I want to say in a 4-player game, it's probably 1 versus 3. Yeah. So, which is interesting because of the way the scoring works out too. Because if the shadows win a round, each player who wasn't eliminated, that's a shadow player, will get 3 points. But if the shamans win a round, each player who wasn't eliminated only gets 2 points. So it's, because there are less shadows, they get more points if they win. So the good side, the shamans can also win if the shadow pawn hasn't reached the moon, like the end of the track after all the cards are played. So, or they eliminate the shadow players. Basically, you score points each round if you're on the winning team, but there are also ways to get points throughout the game. And again, like one of the things I find interesting about this game is usually in like social deduction games, it's like if you're on the good team, if the good team wins, we all win. If you're on the bad team wins, we all win. But in this game, you could potentially be switching sides because you get a new roll card every round. And it's really like only one person's going to win and you want to have the most points. Yeah. So there's a whole thing that's going to kind of play
semi-cooperative from one hand to the next.
Right. Exactly. And this is the may follow game that I was talking about. So when you play your tricks, you don't have to follow suit. And there are reasons why you won't want to periodically. You play with at least 5 suits with a 3-player game and cards numbered 1 to 6. But if you play in 4 or 5 players, you might add another suit or 2 and some more cards. So it just kind of varies based on player count. But the way the tricks resolve is that whoever plays the lowest of the lead suit, and remember, you don't have to follow, they are going to get a token. And there are all these special tokens that have special effects. I won't get into that right now. But if you play the lowest, you get a token. And there are 2 face-up tokens that you can choose from, or you can just draw a rando from the top of the deck or the stack. Then whoever wins the trick, because they have played the highest card of the lead suit, that's how you're going to win the trick, highest card of the lead suit. You're going to take all the remaining cards and you're going to add them to the appropriate kind of slot around the board. So around this little game board, there's a slot for every suit. And you're just kind of like every time you add cards to it, you're going to splay them so you can see which cards have been added to it. Because something happens when all of the cards of a suit are added to it. There's an action on each of these different areas for the different suits that'll trigger for whoever is the person to add the last card there. And like, so there's a whole thing with the timing of that and like winning the trick, yada, yada, yada. But here's the kicker. When you play a card off suit, number one, you're going to be pushing that shadow pawn towards the moon one step. So whether you're good or bad, and you like, if you're bad, you don't want people to know you're bad. So if you are playing offsuit, people are going to wonder, like, are you bad? Did you really not have anything else in this suit and had to play offsuit? Or if you're good, you're trying to like justify like, hey, I'm doing this because I want to get, I want to help with XYZ, there are reasons.
Right. Oh, you said it's may follow as well, right?
Exactly.
So it's like, well, I had to do that. Well, no, you didn't. You could have played something else.
Right.
Well, but my other options were worse. You got to trust me.
Exactly. So there's all that kind of like fun stuff happening. But like I said, like whenever you add, there's a whole timing thing of when you close out a suit, meaning every card for that suit has been played and added to the kind of splay for that. Whoever does that is going to get to take like a special action. And there's like one of the actions is just you gain a victory point. So you get a victory point token. Another one is you would get a special token and you could like move the pawn 2 steps away from the moon. So that actually helps. So maybe sometime you want to play off suit because you want to get a token and push it back, like, because also I don't think I mentioned this, but when you play off suit, it pushes the pawn forward, but then you add that card to the display around the board. So that's another way it could kind of close out a suit if you're the last card to be played then. But yeah, some of the tokens kind of give you points, can move the pawn, and wow, I said that funny. Pawn can move the pawn. And there are also tokens that have daggers on them. So when you have a dagger, that token will be face up. Actually, I think if you take a token from the top of the stack, you don't have to have it face up. But if you take one that's already revealed, you take it face up. So you may or may not know that some players have daggers. And if there are multiple spaces around the game board that when you close out a suit, if you have a dagger and it has a dagger icon, that means you can eliminate a player. And here we go. Now it's social deduction, right? Jonathan, I think I don't know. I don't trust you. I think I'm going to eliminate you.
You keep pushing up that shadow.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But like maybe
Trust me, you can't see the cards in my hand. I don't know. I can't do it.
But maybe
it could have been worse.
but maybe you were good, So you're kind of having those discussions of like people are defending themselves and like, don't eliminate me. I think we should eliminate this person, whatever. But you closing out that column, if you have the dagger, you're able to do that. So sometimes you want to close it off to specifically do that.
That's going to stop you from getting killed, right?
Yes,
you can't pick yourself.
Exactly.
So it's not a vote then. It's just the person who closes it out makes that decision.
Right.
Yeah.
I haven't played it for a while, but I'm pretty sure, the person who has the dagger and closes it out makes the final call on who gets eliminated. There's also a special token that you can get that lets you swap roles. So imagine this, like maybe I have 5 points right now, right? And I'm actually on the good side, so I'm a shaman, but it's looking like the bad side, the shadows could win. And if I'm able to switch to the bad team, because I'm swapping roles with someone, so I don't necessarily know, who I'm swapping with. Although I think there is some effect that makes somebody reveal their token. Anyway, but if I can get on to the shadow side and swap, and then the shadows win, and I get 3 points, and that pushes me to the 8 to kind of like end the game, and maybe everybody was below. So even if there was another shadow player who got the 3 points, they're nowhere near 8. So it was no big deal, but that helped push me over. There's all this like really fun stuff that you're playing with here. And I think it's an awesome game. And you really, if you like social deduction games and if you like trick taking games, this is just like a no brainer. like you really feel that like social deduction aspect, especially when players are playing offsuit. You're like, you don't know who to trust, you know? But yeah, it's really awesome. Have you played Shamans?
I haven't. I've heard good things about it from the trick-taking circles that I like to frequent, but I hate social deduction.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't think it's bad. I personally wither
it's
up.
Not your thing.
I curl up into a little ball, and I'm really not a fan of it as a genre. So it's not something that I've sought out. But from a more neutral position, that sounds really like a fascinating way to do social deduction, like having this trick taking, because you can't see people's hands, but they're making these decisions, and it's may follow, so they have control, but they still have to find a way to get through their hand of cards. It sounds like a really cool way to do it. If I could tolerate social deduction at all, I think I would be into it. And honestly, I would probably try it. The fact that you deal them out differently, like every single hand, it changes so quickly. I think I would give it a go if somebody tried to make it happen, but not the kind of thing that I think
you're
I would
not
go out
drawn
of my way
to that
to make happen.
Yeah. And again, like the other thing that I think is cool about this type of social deduction is that, like, you know, you are on a team in a round, but like you're still looking out for yourself. So you always are questioning if somebody's kind of being selfish versus like helping the team and what people's motives are. I think it's pretty cool. It surprised me quite a bit, even though I was like excited by that that hybrid of social deduction with trick taking. And it like I really, really like this game. So that is Shamans.
Yeah. So the next game I'm going to be talking about is called Schadenfreude. It came out in 2020. You've played this one?
Yes, I love it.
Okay, good.
I love it.
Good.
Go ahead.
So the designer is CTR, published by Studio Turbine, and it's a 3 to 5 player game. And I'm going to go really out of order and say this game is so good at 3, and it's so good at 4, and it is so good at 5. I played it at all the player counts and have really enjoyed it, which is unusual. So this game, the reason I'm talking about it is because it turns some standard trick-taking things on their head. It's a must-follow trick-taker. There's 5 suits in the deck. But right from the very beginning, it's strange because after everybody played one card, the person who played the second highest card of the lead suit is going to win it. So that is really weird, right off the bat. Like normally it's the strongest card, right? Also, so this is a trick-taking game where there is no trump, and also there's no bidding. And those are very standard in a lot of trick-taking style games. And the reason for that is because trump gives you agency with like maybe a bad hand, and bidding adds tension. Like, oh, am I going to hit my bid or not? But Schadenfreude does a really cool thing where it doesn't have either of those mechanics, but it still has awesome tension, and it still has a bunch of agency with how you're going to play the hand. So, like I said, the second highest card from the lead suit is going to win the trick, but then they're going to take the card that they won with, and they're going to put it in front of themselves into a little potential scoring tableau. And then every offsuit card that was played into that trick, they also put into their little tableau. But if you ever take 2 identical cards, they cancel each other out. So if you have a 6 already in your scoring tableau and you take another 6, it cancels out. You lose those 6 points. And you're like, oh, that's bad. I don't want to lose points. Well, maybe you do. And that's another reason why this game is brilliant, because it is a trick taking and trick avoidance game at the same time. Like some games are all about just get more tricks, and some games are all about I don't want any tricks, but this one is both of those, because the game is going to end after any round where somebody has more than 40 points. And everybody who has more than 40 points loses. And then the next person who doesn't have 40 points, the next highest, is going to win. So this is a game where you need points, but you don't want too many points. And it is fascinating because the way it plays out, that first round, nobody has any points. So everybody's like kind of tiptoeing around, trying to get some points, but you don't want to get too many points because you want to be in the running, but you don't want to be, you don't want to look like a sitting duck or like a scapegoat almost in this game, because I've played this before where after the first round, somebody has like 25 points, like they just get blown up. And then suddenly going into the second round, the person who has the second most points, their entire game is just pile as many points onto the 25-point person as possible, maybe get them to bust in that second round, and then the game's over in 2 rounds, and then that other person is going to win. So it's definitely this interesting thing where once somebody looks like they're going to be the person who goes over 40, it almost becomes it's a target. It becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So suddenly that person, I like to joke, it's like Neo in the Matrix. They're just like trying to dodge bullets like crazy, but everybody else is slinging bullets at them.
Yeah.
While the other people who don't have as many points, they're still trying to get some points for themselves because they also want to be in the running. So you have this awesome tension going back and forth, and you could also play things out interestingly with your hand, try to win specific tricks to cancel yourself out. Like if you're getting too many points and you have like a 7 and you have a 7 in your hand, then maybe try to play your 7, try to wait and find the right moment to play your 7 to win a trick, to be the second highest, to then cancel out your own 7 and bring yourself back down to a good level. This deck is also weird. It's -3 to 9. So you could take minus cards, which again will lower your overall score. But these are why I think Schadenfreude is just so fascinating.
Yeah.
It just creates wacky incentives all over the place where you're like, I need points. I don't want points. Wait, I need more points. Wait, give them points. Wait, I need points. Too many points. and then the game ends. And you know, it's usually about 30 minutes. In my experience, it takes 2 to 4 hands. And each hand is, 8 to 10 minutes, like not terribly long. And it's just so cool. Like I said, there's 5 suits. So you're going to get off-suited relatively quickly. So it doesn't have trumping. But once you get off-suit, you can play anything and you're not going to win. And then you're going to be saddling somebody else with those points.
Do you get rid of a card in this one after you get your hand dealt to you?
No. You have your hand of cards, and those are the cards you have.
And then you have the 0 and the 10.
Yes, there are 2 special cards, the 0 and the 10, and they're kind of wild. They match the color of the lead suit. And the 10 is really fun because normally your 9 is safe, right?
Yeah.
It's the second highest card that's going to win the trick. So you play a 9, you're feeling smug, you're fine, and then somebody plays the 10.
I play the 10. I play the 10.
Suddenly you're taking that 9.
And then you're over 40.
And then maybe you're over 40. The stories this game tells are just wonderful. The second time I played this one, it was 4 players, and my wife Jessica had like 28 points after the first hand. And it was just like, oh man, she's screwed. And then the second hand, she got no points.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like other people in the 20s, we went into the third hand where all 4 players were in the 30s. So she was able to dodge like crazy for 2 full hands. And she came this close, like a hair's breadth away from actually winning the game. She essentially lost like 2 cards away from the end. And it was really awesome to see because, it looked like she was just dead after the first hand, but you can fight your way back. And that hand was actually really funny because one of the people just blew right past 40 in that last hand. They were at like 60 points. And suddenly they're like, okay, I'm winning. So then they're like, I'm losing. Therefore, everybody else should lose because if everybody's over 40 points, then everybody
loses.
So then he's trying to saddle everybody with points.
Yeah.
I actually won that game being the only person with points. All 3 other people went over 40 and I had like 38 points. And it was just amazing. And everybody had fun. I mean, it was great for me to win and all, but it was like everybody also had a lot of fun in that moment. And this one is just, it's great to teach it because you can just see people being like, I know trick takers. And then they're like, wait, what? Wait, what? Huh? Wait, what? And then you start playing and they're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
It's always worked.
Yeah. The very first time I played it, I was teaching it and, still wrapping my head around it. And it was all new players. We played a 5-player game and we're like doing stuff. And then that moment, somebody like wiped away somebody's points. It was like, like I see what we can do with this game. Yeah. And I love doing that where like 2 players are high and I'm like, I'm going to try to get them to both push over 40 at once.
Right. You don't want one of them to go over because then the other one will win. You got to push them both over.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so interesting. I'm really glad you put this on. I almost thought about putting this on. I don't know why I didn't.
It's a super cool game. It's relatively available, is my understanding. There's a couple editions, I will say. The first edition, strangely, has pointy edges on the cards.
I know! That's the one I have then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I sleeved them.
I bought the second edition, which has rounded edges, thankfully, and I actually got it through that mutual friend, Jonah. He bought it for me from Cloudcat Games and then shipped it over to me. So
that is awesome.
Everybody knows everybody.
I didn't know there was a round edge version of the Schadenfreude cards.
Yeah.
Cool. You were talking about trick and trade and dual gauge, and I was like, these sound so exciting.
Trains.
So I am going to be talking about Trick of the Rails. This is a game that was originally released in 2011 by Akazu brand, and I have the 2016 edition from Terra Nova Games, and it's designed by Hisashi Hayashi, who's the designer of Yokohama and that deck building game called Trains, which I own. Yeah, I own, and I still haven't played. I really want to play Trains, but I love Yokohama. And actually, I didn't realize that it was the same designer until today, today when I looked it up. But this is an 18xx style trick-taking game where you're basically kind of alternating between collecting stocks to boost your portfolio for these different companies, which are the suits of the cards, or you're laying railroad tracks because the cards are kind of sort of like multi-use cards. So there are 5 companies or 5 suits, you can think of it, but there are companies in the game, and they are numbered 1 through 10. Basically, the card could either be in your tableau in front of you as a stock or a share, or it'll be played into kind of a common, there's a track laying area of the board. So at the start of the game, you'll place for every suit in kind of a vertical column, you'll place one of each station card. So you have like red, green, yellow station. They all have names like B and O and all that stuff.
That sets 18xx game
exactly.
Gamer's hearts aflutter.
So you'll
NYC.
So you'll have the starting stations going down the table, and then you'll also have an area where you'll set up all of these cards called the trick lane, and they're kind of like directing you, like every time someone wins a trick, like what happens. So there's a trick lane. And then there's this area where you'll start building out tracks for the different companies. And after you deal out the cards, I don't know how many, but you deal out a certain amount based on player count. Any of the leftover cards are going to go and be added to the track laying area and build out these stations. So you kind of add them to the right of the station. And as you're adding cards to when you're laying track, you're basically increasing the value or attempting to increase the value of that particular train company. This is a must-follow trick-taking game, and the highest card of the lead suit wins. But again, when you win a trick, it kind of the trick lane card is going to tell you what happens. And this is another game that's also one hand. Like the entire game, you're just playing one hand of cards, and then you score up and you see what happens. So if the card in the trick lane is an exchange card or a railway card, whoever the winner is, they're going to take that as a company share in their portfolio. So maybe it's a red card. I now have a stock in the red company. And then their card is going to, so also in this trick lane, you have these kind of like reserve cards, and they're all spaced out in a certain way that's really cleverly listed on the box of the game too, which is really helpful for you to kind of like quickly.
Right on the edge.
Yeah. So you can set up the game quickly. But you're going to put the card you played in replacing the leftmost reserve card. And then you take the one that was there as a share. And then all the other players are going to add the card that they played they're going to keep it as a company share, their own company share. Then if you win the trick and it's a city card, the winner's going to add the city to either end of the company's railway. And where it goes kind of matters in endgame scoring, which I'll explain in a second. But then the other players would add their cards to the corresponding company's railways. So if John played a yellow and didn't win, in this case, he would place his yellow card and extend the track on either end of the yellow company. And then if it's a locomotive card, the winner is going to get to pick one of the companies and place the locomotive card to the far left end, the left end of the railway, on one that doesn't already have one. So each company can only have one locomotive card. So you're going to keep doing this and play through all these tricks, play out your hand of cards. And at the end, you'll have, some shares of certain companies in front of you, other players will, and then you're going to calculate the value of each company and, figure out your score that way. So the way it works is the railway cards all have a value on them, either 10, 20, 30, or 40. I think the higher number cards will have like 40, then, the lower number cards will have 10. So I mentioned these locomotive cards. So this is these locomotive cards have a number that's indicating the distance that you're going to calculate. And when you're calculating distance, you're looking at the best consecutive path of cards. So if my locomotive card has 3 and I'm looking and it's on the yellow rail company, I'm going to find whatever 3 cards are touching that would, have the highest value. And that will be the score, sort of, because the locomotive cards also have a modifier. So maybe I'm on this, going back to the same example, I have 3 cards and maybe they total up to 80, but my locomotive modifier is minus 50. So that means my yellow stocks are all going to be worth 30. Did I do that? Yeah, 80 minus 50 are all going to be worth 30. And so you're going to do this for each. And like one of the locomotives is like, has an infinity side where you
it's diesel.
Yeah, exactly. It's diesel. Exactly. Where you're going to score up, you're going to add up all of them, but they're all kind of modified. So you're then going to say, okay, yellow is scoring at 30 a pop. How many yellows do you have? This is your score for yellow. And then, reds are scoring at negative 20. Oops. So hopefully you don't have a lot of reds, because then, they're going to all be multiplied by negative 20. And you'll tally your score based on your stocks and the value of these railways companies. And you will, see who has makes the most money. So this is a game I've only played it. I think I've only played it once, actually, because I was like, I opened the box and again, now I want to play it more, just like remembering. And I've kept it on my shelf forever because I just thought it was so different. I remember feeling like it's, a little bit opaque. At the time, I had never played an 18xx game and I was probably still new to board games, but I think I could grok it a lot better now with more market manipulation experience under my belt. But yeah, you're trying to kind of increase the value of whichever train whichever company you have you're most invested in, or you're trying to invest in the company that looks like it's doing well. And yeah, I think it's just like really cool and really unique that it kind of takes 18xx mechanisms and mixes it with trick taking. Have you ever played this one?
I played it once as well. 3 players at the Portland Games Collective convention last year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. How many players were in your game?
3 players also.
Yeah. So it's my understanding from being in that community, trick taking and whatnot, people seem to think that 3 players is the best way to play the game.
Yeah.
I have not tried it with other player counts, so I can't really speak to that. But I very much enjoyed it. I did win, but
nice.
I still enjoyed it. It was really neat because, as you said, the game's getting deeper and deeper. You're getting closer to the end, so you have a better idea of which companies are good, which companies are bad. So you know what you want to do, but you have less and less agency because you have less cards in your hand. So you have less and less options to go for. I remember being really fascinated with it. I can't remember the specifics of the rules that much, so I'm glad you did the overview again. It's been like 8 months, but I definitely came away from it quite curious to explore it more. It definitely had a lot of those shared incentive feels where you're like, I'm going to lay some really good track for this company. And then somebody's like, well, I'm going to put a terrible train on it. Or they're like, well, I'm just going to take over this company and get all of the stock and then put this awesome train in there. And you're like, why did I lay that good track? And so then you're like putting terrible track on other companies, hoping that you don't later regret it because suddenly you find yourself investing in it. Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah.
It does a lot for a deck of cards, right?
Exactly. And I think like there is so much, both of us have only played it once. There's so much to kind of be explored. You have the choice of when you're adding cards to the rail, putting it on the left and right and thinking about like what locomotive might end up there, which ones are left. And you're kind of having some agency over how things might score, because it always has to be whichever the largest consecutive set. So yeah, it's really cool. I've kept it all these years and I've wanted to revisit it, and now I'm like thirsty to revisit it.
It's my understanding it's a very rare game.
Cool.
Like not easy to come by. So it's good that you have a copy.
I got a
you
copy.
Can actually get it played.
Yes. It's a deep cut. So that is Trick of the Rails.
Awesome. So the game number 2, the next game I'm going to be talking about is the second. Well, not really. Climbing shedding game. I guess we've talked about other ones, but this is the second one I'm highlighting specifically. Again, mostly we're talking about trick takers, but there are some really cool climbing shedding games out there, and they're some of my favorite card games. So this one is interesting. So it's technically released in 2023, although I think it's like 99% done.
Okay.
It's called Of What's Left, and it's designed by our mutual friend Taylor Renner of the Taylor's Trick-Taking Table YouTube channel.
Awesome. I don't know this one.
It's super cool.
Yes.
I just played it last night again, but I played it several times before. So this, much like 99, is a standard deck game. You can play it right now with any deck of cards. And this is a climbing game, but it's kind of like a almost shedding game. And the reason for that is because the conceit is most shedding games, you want to be the first person to play all your cards, right? And in Hachi Train, it was like you want to play all your cards and you don't want to be the last person with cards. Well, in Of What's Left, you want to have the best scoring cards in your hand when somebody else is forced to play all their cards. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today, because, we're talking about interesting card games that have like strange takes and new mechanisms that feel different. And this one feels so different because you're playing cards out, and the actual meld play that you're doing is pretty straightforward. Like, same sets of the same number or runs. The runs have to be all the same suit, and everybody gets one wild card. It's an ace. Everybody gets one ace at the start of every hand. So you're playing these things out, and that's all kind of standard. Somebody plays a run, you pass on it, goes over there. But as soon as somebody has 5 or less cards in their hand, they no longer have the option of passing when they have a legal play. So normally in these kind of games, you can always pass. You're like, I don't want to play. Even though I could, I don't want to play. But as soon as you have 5 cards, if somebody plays a 7 and you've got a queen, you have to play that queen or like something else that's higher than a 7. So that's why I say when somebody gets forced to play all of their cards, because you're going to find yourself in a situation where you have to play these cards. And then once somebody goes out, you score points, and you lose 1 point for every card in your hand. And then you gain points for the lowest value card in your hand. And that's essentially it. Also, if you have more than 5 cards, you lose 2 points per card. So play your cards. And so what this means is like the perfect thing is, Candice, you go out and I have a king. And that's worth 13 points. It's effectively a 13.
Right.
But then I have 1 card, so a -1. 13 -1, I got 12 points. That's amazing. But what's more likely to happen is I might have 3 cards, and then the lowest card is a 6. So that means that's 6 -3. I get 3 points. Hey, I'm still positive. What can happen, and what did happen last night against me, is, so as I said, this is a game about having lots of points in your hand when somebody else goes out. But the flip side to that is you could just shed out. If you are the person to go out, you get 0 points by definition. You have no cards in your hand, which normally is a bad thing unless your opponents are sitting there with massive hands. So what happened last night in one of the hands that we played, I had 8 cards in my hand still, and the lowest card I had was a 2. So that was 8 times 2, 16 negative points, plus 2, I got -14 points.
Ouch.
And so there's times where 0 is great. As if everybody else is plunged into the negative, 0 would be fine. So it is a shedding game, but it also has this mindset of like, how do you play this hand? Like, you can look at your hand and you're like, this is an all gas hand. Like, just pedal to the metal, gonna try to go out as quickly as I can. But what if you get almost out, but then you kind of stall out, and then somebody drops like 3 sets in a row, and you're like, oh no.
Crap.
Now I'm going to be forced to go out, get 0 points, and they're going to get points. It's really fascinating, and it's so cool that it all comes out of this standard deck. And I have to be honest, this is one of my favorite shedding games at this point. And one of my favorite climbing games in general, climbing shedding games, because of that brain space that it puts me into. It just feels so fresh and different. I've played this with Tichu players, and it just blows their brains out of their skulls because it's so similar and yet so completely different. And like I said, the game is effectively done. It hasn't been published or anything like that, and I'm not sure if it will, but it does have a Board Game Geek page, and in the file section there is a up-to-date version of the file, so you can check it out and play it right now if you have a standard deck of cards. And I could not recommend it more. It's weird in all the good ways.
Awesome. Yeah, that one was not on my radar, so thanks for sharing.
It's cheap.
That's Of What's Left. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so my number 2 game that I'm mentioning is Roulette-Taking Game.
I've not played this, but
you
I
haven't?
really
Okay.
want to.
Okay.
It sounds so cool. I've heard of it.
This is a game that came out in 2022 from Pay Guild. It's 2 to 4 players. I apologize, but I don't know how to pronounce the designer's name. But it's Roulette-Taking Game. You can find it on BGG. So this is a trick-taking game that mixes trick-taking with roulette. So you have this like roulette betting mat, and the whole game, each round, you are betting on which card will win the last trick. So when you
like the ball just pinging around on the roulette wheel, like where is it going to land?
Exactly. And the cards are numbered 1 to 36, and they're in 2 suits, mainly red and black. And there are 2 special 0 cards, which are trump cards. But some black cards have a Grim Reaper on them, and some red cards have a Jester on them. More on that in a bit. But just know that there's 1 through 36 and 2 zeros, and they're red and black. So you'll deal out a certain number of cards based on player count, and any cards that aren't dealt out, you're going to block off on the betting board, because it's like, well, those numbers are not going to win because they're not even in the game.
Sure.
This is a must-follow trick-taking game, but you can always play trumps. So I mentioned those 2 zeros are trumps, but the Jesters and Reapers can be played off suits as trumps. So, basically, if I play a red, if I lead with a red 5, I don't even know if 5 is a red in this game, but if I lead with a red 5 and you have red cards in your hand, but you also have black cards in your hand that have a Grim Reaper, you may play a black card with a Grim Reaper and play it as a trump. Or you can always play the 0 or the double 0. And, I'm pretty sure, I think the double 0 is the weakest trump, and then the 0, and then it's just the strongest trump is just whatever the highest number is, and that would win. And in this game, when you win a trick, if you are not the dealer for the round, this is how you are going to make bets on what card or which number you think might win the very last trick. And the way betting works is, it's like, if you're familiar with roulette, you can bet on a specific number. And what that looks like is you have like a token that has your player color, and you'll stack some money on it. So we know, okay, Jonathan bet 5 on number 28. He thinks number 28 is going to win. But you could also bet on their spaces for betting that an even number is going to win, an odd number is going to win, a red is going to win, a black's going to win. And there's some other fun betting options, but you basically need to win a trick and not be the dealer to place a bet. If you're the dealer and you win a trick, then you're going to basically be placing one of your betting tokens to basically just block the space and not let anybody bet on it. And and then at the end of the round, after we see whatever the number is that won the last trick, the players who had correct bets get paid out based on them. Maybe you bet something and it was 3 to 1 and you put $5, you get $15 now. But for any incorrect bets, that money that you bet goes to the dealer. So the dealer is kind of
the house always wins.
Yeah, exactly. The dealer is trying to, hopefully steer you in the wrong direction as much as possible so that you bet incorrectly and they take your money. But if you're a player, you're trying to just make as much money as possible. And I think you basically play rounds until everybody is the dealer once, and then you just see who has the most money. But I just love the betting aspect of this game.
That sounds so neat.
Yeah, and the fact that the dealer is like kind of plays slightly asymmetrically than the other players, since they're not betting, but they're trying to make the house win. So this is the one that Jonah showed me at BGGCon last year. And I was able to get a copy from CloudCap Games in Portland. And I think it's just really cool and really unique. So I think you should definitely check this one out.
Yeah, I knew about the roulette bit. I didn't I don't think I knew about the asymmetry with the dealer. That's extra interesting to me. This is one I've heard a lot of really good buzz about. I haven't had an opportunity to try it, but it's got a great table presence too. Like, it looks like a craps table with the bets and the stacks and everything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and your little currency in the game are these like little tiny like little chips that are different colors. I don't love that, but hey, you could go out and like play this with real poker chips if you have nice poker chips.
Yeah.
Give it more of that Vegas feel. But yeah, that is Roulette-Taking Game, and it looks like we probably have one more game each to talk about. So I'll let you pass it to you, John.
We do. So if there's anybody listening to this who's really into card games, they're probably sitting there flummoxed. Like, how have they not talked about a single design from Taiki Shinzawa, the designer? This is a very prolific and maybe polarizing designer from Japan. And I saved it for number one because I had to. I'm going to be talking about Dois. Have you heard of this one before?
I have not heard of Dois.
So Taiki Shinzawa is the designer of this one. The publisher is Kentiak and New Mill, actually. So this is a game that's impossible to get right now, but will be very easy to get in about a year or so, is my understanding. It got signed by New Mill. They're going to have a Kickstarter for it, I believe, at some point next year. And it's kind of a new name. I believe it's going to be called Charms. But anyway, this is a 3 to 4 player game, again, designed by Taiki Shinzawa. His most famous game is probably Maskmen, but also Ghosts of Christmas, American Bookshop, Ambiente Abyssal, which I almost talked about today. Ambiente Abyssal is a brilliant climbing game.
I've always wanted to play that one.
Yeah, the Zimbabwe Trick, the Green Five-Ura, it's just Taiki Shinzawa has designed so many games, and honestly, I could have talked about just his designs, and they're not necessarily my favorite like from a joy perspective, but from a mechanics perspective, they're all wacky, and in my opinion so far, Dois is the craziest of them. So you have this deck of cards, and in it you have suit cards and you have rank cards. So essentially your deck of cards is split in two. You shuffle this up, you deal it out, and then you're going to do trick taking. It's must follow, but every single trick after the first one, you're going to be playing one card down. So the very first trick, you have to play a rank card and a suit card. So you play like the 3 and the green card. You put them face up in front of you, right next to each other, and that's a green 3. You are building a card, essentially, right?
Wow.
So we all do that the first time, and then as we proceed through, the person who played the strongest card is going to get to lead the next one. Now you only play one card. So let's say I have this green 3 in front of me, and the person to my right, they play a blue card down, and they had like a 6. So now they have a blue 6. They get to use their 6 from the last round, and it comes to me, and it's must follow. If I have a blue suit card in my hand, I have to play it covering up the green, which means I now have a 3 blue. I wasn't able to change the rank. But let's say the person instead played a green, and I already have a green in front of me. Well, now I could change the rank because I'm already following along. So it is this crazy game where you're building your cards as you go, and it has some really awesome play experiences because you can do things like, if you look out there and you're like, okay, my rank is the best. I've got a 6 a 5, a 4, and a 2. Then you could try to lead a suit to force everybody else to have to follow suit so they can't change their rank, so that you are already above them because you already have this higher number. It's brilliant. It is such a completely awesome way to play a trick-taking game. Like, as I said, Taiki Shinzawa comes up with really wacky ideas, really subverting a lot of the standard stuff that you can see in trick-taking games. Like, oh, this trick-taking game is like this, but it's a little bit different like that. But this one is just super different. I will say that I love the card play. The card play is super cool, and I've only played this once, but here I am talking about it after one play.
Blew your mind.
However, I'm not crazy about the scoring. And in fact, it's my understanding that for the New Mill version, they're going to be working on tweaking the scoring a little bit. It's a bidding game where you're bidding the number of tricks you're going to take. And imagine that. You're looking at a hand of cards with rank cards and suit cards, and you're like, I'm going to take 4.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even do that? Well, bidding is definitely still going to be in it, but the way it's going to be scored is different. And it is such a fresh and interesting experience trying to get to your bid and not go over your bid while you're playing these things out. That's really
cool.
All I have to say about it. It's great that it's going to be available. I'm definitely going to be going in for it.
I'll look out for it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very it's highly different. Like one of those things, if you drop it on the table and you start talking about it, people are just going to be like, what? How can this exist? And you're like, well, it does. And it's pretty darn fun too.
So I played a game I think at the same BGG con where I feel like it was a team game where you're like one person plays this. Now I'm wondering, like, this is not a team game, right? There's
no, there's no team base.
Because I played something where you play a suit and a rank, but I think it was a team game because you played diagonal from someone. I feel like James Nathan played this and showed me and Eric.
That sounds about right.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, I don't know what it is. And now it's like I've never played this. This sounds amazing though. So I'll definitely look out for when they're kickstarting or pre-order or whatever, because that sounds awesome.
Yeah, more people need to know about this for sure, and they certainly will when that campaign.
And
goes.
It's pronounced Dois.
I think so. Dois? I don't know. It's DOIS.
Okay. Okay. Well, the last game I'm going to mention is another one that Jonah showed me at VGGCon last year. Man, I learned a lot of cool games. Like half this list is stuff from that VGGCon. But it is TRICKTAKERs. And this was originally released in 2021 by Joyful Games, but the Portland Games Collective is releasing an English edition. Yes. Sometime this year, I think in 2023. This is a game designed by Hirokin, and it plays with 2 to 5 players, and it's a trick-taking game where each round, everybody is going to draft a unique character card, which is going to dictate how you score for the round. And also, each character has their own kind of special abilities. Basically, insane abilities. It's crazy. I when I first played this, I was like, oh, so this is like the trick-taking game, right? It's like each character is its own has its own trick-taking game rules, and they're all playing against each other. I thought it was so awesome. You basically play 3 rounds, but it could end, there are a couple of different auto victory conditions that can make it end early. Every round you'll have a hand of 5 cards and you'll get your character. There are 8 different characters in the base game, but you'll only have 5 that you'll be playing with that are draftable. Mm-hmm. And throughout the game, you can gain crowns. If you get a gold crown if you won the most tricks in a round, and you get a black crown if you won 0 tricks or did not win any tricks. And you automatically win if you are able to get 2 crowns, or if you're able to get 3 black crowns. 2 gold crowns, you win. 3 black crowns, you win.
Or a bunch of other auto win
conditions. But then
there's a lot of ways.
Each character also has their own auto win conditions. And then you, basically your character will probably come with some special setup rules. Sometimes certain characters add different cards or different components, and it'll show you, how your tricks will be scored. It's a must-follow trick-taking game. There are 4 colored card suits, and then there are a couple special cards, like a rare card, and then which is higher than anything. They go from 1 to 9. The cards go from 1 to 9. So the rare card is the only thing that beats a 9. And then there's also a white flag card, which is the weakest suit. So if you ever trying not to win and you have that, that's pretty good. But the thing that stands out again about this game is that the characters are so unique and so different. You have the king who mainly wants to just win as many tricks as possible. I think if you win 5, that's one of the auto win conditions. And they
get extra rare cards.
Yeah, you get an extra rare card, a special rare card. And then, but I think it's one that other players could tell you still have it in your hand because the back is different. Yeah. Then there's a gambler where you're bidding on how many tricks you think you'll win, and you gain and lose points based on that. There's the hermit who loses points if they win only 1 or 2 tricks, but otherwise you gain points. And they have a special ability where before they play a card, each trick, they get to draw a card from the deck and then discard one. And there's the adventurer who gets this deck of item cards, and they're interacting with these item cards that give abilities. So yeah, I think it's just such a really, really unique game. And I think it's really fascinating how you have all of these different playing characters playing against each other,
Yeah, how the heck does that work? The rules can be so different from one to the next. Yeah, the Berserker throws away their entire hand and then draws from a super hand.
Yeah.
But if they win too much, they lose.
Yeah, it's wild.
And then there's a whole expansion with 7 more characters.
Yeah.
That are even more crazy. There's like an alchemist that you play like multiple cards and meld them together, and you've got. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've only played with like the basic 5 that they recommend you starting with. But I do have the expansion, like both the expansion and there's like a little one or something. But
yeah, that's kind of a standalone separate thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one will be like, I have the Japanese edition and I just printed the English rules off BGG. They posted English rules, but there is again an English edition coming out from Portland Games Collective, which is awesome. So look out for that if you're into stuff like this that, where you have like just kind of wacky, like unique abilities. The animals are really cool. Like the art is really
adorable.
Cool.
The components are great too.
Yeah, the great components. And the other thing is there's another game by the same designer in this same universe, the TRICKTAKERs universe, coming out called King's TRICKTAKERs. And that I don't know too much about it, but it's a little bit. I
backed it on Kickstarter.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know a ton about it either, but yeah, it's similar. Lots of asymmetry.
It's
that
really
one, I believe
cool.
you draft like one asymmetry for the whole game,
and
then you also draft other asymmetries for each hand.
Yeah,
and
wacky.
You mentioned Little TRICKTAKERs earlier.
Yes,
which is,
that's what I was trying to do.
It's not really. It's sort of an expansion. It's not actually standalone. You need the base game, but it doesn't mix with it. It has its own special rules, and it has this crazy thing where you meld 2 different asymmetries together. It's so kind of a crazy universe with all 3 of these games essentially with the base TRICKTAKERs, then Little TRICKTAKERs and Kings. They have similar art, similar universe thematically, and then also just a similar universe of just insanity with the different rules and stuff.
Yeah,
and it's a bit a lot to unload to get there, but people seem to really love it. I've actually only played it once, but I built a highly scripted tabletop simulator mod for the base game and the expansion characters. And so I got to really kind of dig into that world a little bit.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome.
There's a time traveler in the expansion where you can rewind time.
Oh my goodness.
Like be like, you know what? Let's redo that trick. I don't like how that went. Just crazy stuff.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't even like really looked into it because I'm like, still wrapping my head around again, like the base game factions. But yeah, it's just like a mishmash of like a bunch of different things from different trick-taking games and just other kind of games. And yeah, I think that the real special thing is these unique characters that you're drafting. So this is a really cool one. It won't be for everyone, just like any game, but if that sounds exciting to you, it's called TRICKTAKERs.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that was a lot of games.
That was. You know what? Like when I
could talk about 20 more right now too.
It's crazy because like when we were talking about doing card games, I was like, oh, this will be a shorter episode. Cool, But it's like we're both so excited about them. There's so much to say about these like awesome games that are coming out. And that was so great. It was awesome talking to you, Jonathan. This is like, it's kind of like we're hanging out, and I wish we lived closer so we could play games together because I feel like we have some similar tastes.
Absolutely. We'll make it happen. Conventions or internet or otherwise.
We'll figure it out. So thanks again for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. This is a lot of fun.
You've been listening to the Board Game Geek podcast, produced and edited by Candice Harris. Special thanks to Matt Fonda for editing and mixing our music. Be sure to visit us on the web at BoardGameGeek.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch under Board Game Geek. You can reach us by email at podcast@BoardGameGeek.com. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming!